Welcome, you are on the right channel. In the heart of Okade, a lush and lively village tucked between the green hills of southwestern Nigeria, there stood a small buka at the edge of the market square. The buka, built from corrugated iron sheets and weathered wooden planks, wasn't fancy, but it was famous. This was Mama Ifen's buka, a place where the air always smelled of palm oil, smoked catfish, fresh pepper, and something magical. Every morning, before the sun even broke through the mist that kissed the tops of the palm trees, Mama Ifen would be up. She tied her faded Ankara wrapper tightly around her waist, tucked her head in a matching scarf, and set her massive pots over open firewood. By the time the first rooster crowed, steam was already rising above her roof, and hungry mouths were already on the way. Her food was legendary. Fufu, pounded so soft it melted like foam on the tongue. Egusi soup, thick, creamy, and generously packed with assorted meats. Bitter leaf, bold and deep with flavors only someone trained in ancestral cooking could summon. Pepper soup, fiery enough to make grown men cry with joy. And her grilled fish? Some said it could wake the dead with its aroma alone. People came from all over Okemasai, Arenal, even distant Ijibarimo, just to eat at Mama Ifen's buka. Bus drivers made it a mandatory stop. Traders scheduled their market runs around her buka's open hours. Children would sneak out with coins stolen from their mother's purse just to buy her fried plantains. Her food wasn't just nourishment, it was a ritual, a comfort, a memory. Yet, for all her fame and success, Mama Ifen remained humble. She greeted everyone with a wide, toothy smile and a gentle "my Pekin," or "my son." No child ever walked past her buka hungry. If they couldn't pay, she'd serve them anyway, adding an extra piece of pomo or meat, whispering, "Go. God will bless you." On Fridays, she gave discounts to old men and pregnant women. On Sundays, she cooked in massive quantities for the church volunteers. The villagers called her a blessing, a mother to all, a pillar of the community. They said she had no husband and no children of her own, but no one ever questioned her life. Not really. In a place like Okade, where mouths needed feeding and hearts needed warmth, anyone who filled bellies and wiped children's tears was family. Her reputation spread far and wide. Journalists once came from Ibadan to do a short video on her. The local radio station praised her as a model entrepreneur. Everyone adored Mama Ifen. She was living proof that you didn't need to go to the city to make it in life. And more than that, she was proof that kindness still existed in a world full of shadows. But evil, they say, has many faces. And sometimes it wears the gentlest smile. There were small things, subtle signs that people ignored. Like how her buka never seemed to run out of ingredients, even during food scarcity. Or how the same young apprentice girls who cooked with her each year never returned the next. People would ask casually, "Where's Beezy that used to help you?" And Mama Ifen would shrug. She'd go back to her people. Village girl, no fit keep up. And that was that. Sometimes, dogs would growl and whimper around the back of her buka. A strange odor, slightly metallic and sharp, hung in the air some nights after she finished cooking. But no one paid it any mind. After all, she served the best meals in Okade. What else mattered? The truth was, no one wanted to know more than what was served on their plate. For a long time, everything was peaceful. The buka thrived. Children laughed in front of it. Grown men fought over tables. Life in Okade revolved around the smell from Mama Ifen's pots. Until the day that Son returned from Lagos. Son had not stepped foot in Okade for 6 years. The last time he saw the dusty red soil of his village was the day he boarded a lorry bound for Lagos. chasing dreams that were bigger than palm trees and smoky evenings. But Lagos had not been kind. The city taught him how to hustle, how to sleep hungry, how to smile even when his stomach groaned. After all the struggles, odd jobs, betrayals, heartbreaks, he had returned home with little more than a faded backpack and a heart full of exhaustion. The air in Okade was different, slower, kinder. The scent of hibiscus and charcoal fire danced on the wind. Chickens wandered freely. Children chased tires down narrow paths. It was a world untouched by the madness of the city, and Son's soul drank it in. On his first morning back, his mother hugged him so tightly, he feared his bones might crack. She made yam porridge for breakfast, but his appetite remained restless. Something was missing, something he didn't even know he had missed. And then he smelled it, the unmistakable aroma that once ruled his childhood afternoons. Mama Ifen's buka. His legs took him there before his mind could catch up. The old buka looked the same, rusted zinc roofing, smoke curling lazily from the firewood stove, laughter spilling out from every wooden bench. Women in wrappers argued about prices. Hungry men waved spoons impatiently. And there, in her usual corner, was Mama Ifen, smiling like always, stirring a massive pot like she was blessing it. Is this not Son, son of Mama Runk? She called out as soon as she spotted him. He smiled. It's me, Mama Ifen. My boy has returned. Come, come. Sit down. What will you eat? Iba? Amla? Fufu. Son's stomach growled at the mere mention. Fufu and bitterleaf soup, ma. You have tasten, she laughed, already scooping the steaming fufu with expert speed. You Lagos boys will know the difference between city pepper and village pepper today. He smiled, appreciating her familiar warmth. Her presence was like a warm wrapper on a cold night, reassuring, almost maternal. She served his food herself, patting his shoulder before returning to her pot. Son stared at the meal before him. The soup shimmered, thick and green, heavy with chunks of goat meat. The fufu sat like a king on the plate, soft and perfect. He dipped his fingers in water, blessed the food in his heart, and pinched a piece of fufu. Just as he brought it toward the soup, he heard it. A voice. Faint, trembling. Please don't eat me. His fingers froze midair. He blinked, looked around. Had someone whispered to him? The buka was alive with noise, spoons clinking, men laughing, a baby crying somewhere. Nothing unusual, but something was off. Then he heard it again. Softer, closer. Please, I'm a human being. Don't eat me. He looked at his plate. The fufu had trembled, only slightly, like a ripple in still water. Son's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced. Was he hallucinating? Had Lagos finally broken him? He reached for the fufu again, hesitantly, as if it might bite him first. This time, as his fingers touched it, a shudder ran through the lump. Help me, please. Son screamed. The plate flew from his hand, crashing against the wooden table and sending soup splattering across the floor. All eyes turned to him. He stumbled backward, nearly falling, pointing at the remnants of his food. The fufu. It spoke. It said it's human. It told me not to eat it. At first, silence. Then a few people chuckled nervously. Someone muttered, "This Lagos boy Don craze." But Son wasn't laughing. He wasn't joking. He was on his knees weeping. I swear, I heard it. It begged me not to eat it. It was alive. The food is not just food. There's something in it, something evil. Mama Ifen's face changed. Just for a second, that warm, motherly expression vanished. Her lips pressed tightly together. Her eyes narrowed, flickering with something unreadable. But then she blinked and smiled again, shaking her head. My son, you need rest. Lagos has stressed you. Come, let me get you water. But Son wouldn't stop screaming. I know what I heard. It was real. That thing, it cried. It begged me. A few customers stood up, now visibly uncomfortable. One woman crossed herself and whispered prayers under her breath. Another mother pulled her child away from the bench. Then, without warning, a shriek pierced the air. A woman near the firewood stove collapsed. In the panic, her body slammed into the massive iron pot Mama Ethan had been stirring. The pot shook violently, and the lid, balanced carefully on top, rolled off and hit the floor with a loud clang. The smell that followed was not the smell of soup. It was something else. Something rotten, fleshy, metallic. People gasped. One brave man stepped forward, holding his wrapper over his nose, and peered inside. His scream ripped through the market. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The smell rising from Mama Ethan's pot was heavy, foul in a way no normal stew could ever be. It clung to the air like a curse, invading nostrils, twisting stomachs. It was the kind of smell that had no place in a kitchen. Then came the second scream. The man who had dared to look into the pot staggered backward, face pale, hands shaking. He fell to the ground, pointing, unable to form words. It took another brave soul, a meat seller from across the market, to step forward and lift the lid higher. And that was when the horror became real. Inside the pot, buried beneath layers of thick, oily soup, was a human toe. Not just a piece of meat, a human toe, still with a faint trace of painted nail, swollen and cooked. It floated beside a half-melted tortoise, its eyes wide open, still intact. The buka erupted into chaos. Women screamed and ran. Men overturned tables, scattering bowls and spoons in their panic. Children cried, some pulled roughly by their mothers, others stumbling in confusion. The air turned wild with shouting, blood of Jesus. Oh, Lorno, abomination. Son remained frozen where he knelt, eyes glassy. He didn't need to say another word. His madness was no longer madness. He had spoken the truth. Mama Ethan did not move. She stood near the doorway, silent, her expression unreadable. Her hands were still coated with palm oil. The red stain glistened like fresh blood. Mama Ethan, someone shouted. What is in your pot? Another voice cried. You're cooking human beings. It was the butcher who finally confronted her, voice shaking with rage. What is this? What kind of witchcraft are you doing here? You've been feeding us our own. Mama Ethan's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted from face to face. Customers she had served for years, women she had fed during pregnancy, children she had cuddled and prayed for. Their eyes were wide now, full of betrayal and disgust. A trembling old woman pointed a bony finger at her. I gave you my daughter to help you in the kitchen. You said she traveled. Where is Beezy? A young man added. My brother disappeared 2 years ago. He came to work for you. You told us he stole and ran away. Where is Deo? More accusations poured in. More names. More missing children. It was as if a veil had been lifted and everyone could suddenly see. Not the smiling, generous Mama Ethan they loved, but something else entirely. A predator. Someone lit a match. Bring her out. She must confess. Which? The angry mob surged forward, but the butcher raised his hand. No, we need to hear it from her mouth. Let her speak. All eyes turned to her. Even the birds had gone silent. A strange, Heavy calm fell over the buka. And then Mama Ethan laughed. It was low at first, dry and empty. But it grew, shaking her chest, echoing off the walls of her shack. It was not the laugh of a joyful woman. It was the laugh of something broken, something possessed. "You think I am the only one?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You think you eat meat in this country and know where it comes from? You think it is only me?" They stared at her, stunned. She stepped forward. "Yes, I cooked them. I boiled their bones and used their blood in my stew. You licked your fingers, you begged for more. You brought your children here. You prayed for me." "You're mad," someone shouted. "No," she said. "I was hungry. I was alone. I was barren and forgotten. They mocked me for not having children. So I made the world eat their children. I fed your greed with your own flesh." Tears streamed down faces. Men clenched their fists. Mothers collapsed onto the ground, wailing for the daughters they would never see again. The market square was no longer a place of trade. It was now a place of mourning. Suddenly, a heavy thud sounded behind the shed. A few boys ran around to investigate and moments later returned dragging a sack, a large, soaked sack that reeked of death. Inside were bones, skulls, limbs in different stages of decay. Human, unmistakably human. That was the final straw. The rage exploded. Ropes were brought. Tires were rolled in from the vulcanizer's stall. Kerosene was fetched. "Please, don't do this here," a local pastor pleaded. "Let the police handle it." But no one was listening. The people of Okade had eaten their own. They had swallowed evil with sweet soup and laughed with death beside their plates. There would be no forgiveness. Mama Ethan was dragged into the square, her hands bound, her face now blank. She didn't struggle. She didn't cry. She simply stared at the sky, as if searching for something beyond the clouds. Someone shouted, "Confess again. Let the world hear it." And she did, calmly, word for word. She named the children. She told where she buried their remains. She described how she spoke incantations into the soup to silence their souls. She admitted everything. Then they placed the tire around her neck, and the fire began to rise. The fire caught quickly. Someone had soaked the tire in kerosene so thoroughly that the moment a lit match touched it, it exploded into a curtain of flames. The crowd didn't cheer. No one danced or shouted. There was no joy in what they were doing. Only a deep, cold rage carved from betrayal and heartbreak. Mama Ethan didn't scream. She didn't even flinch when the fire kissed her skin. She stood there, wrapped in smoke and flickering orange light, her eyes still fixed on the sky, as though searching for a god who had long turned his back. Her clothes ignited, her flesh crackled, and yet her lips moved, muttering something. No one could hear the words. Some said it was a curse. Others believed it was a prayer. A few claimed it was a song, but no one could forget the sound of it. People shielded their children's eyes. The village square was filled with the smell of burning rubber, human skin, and something else, shame. The old women sobbed uncontrollably. Young men held their heads, pacing in disbelief. Some women clutched their stomachs and wailed like those who had lost husbands in war. It was not just the death of Mama Ethan they mourned. It was the death of trust. "She cooked my son," someone whispered. "I thought I was giving him to a mother." "My daughter helped her grind pepper every evening," said another woman, trembling. "We never saw her again. She said she ran away with a boy. I believed her. God, I believed her." The fire raged for what felt like hours. When it finally died down, what remained of Mama Ethan was unrecognizable. A charred figure wrapped in soot and ash. Her eyes, though hollow, seemed to still watch the sky. Someone quietly dropped a white cloth over her remains. Silence sat heavily on Okade. Even the birds refused to sing. A pastor stepped forward and began to pray, his voice cracking, his hands trembling as he pleaded for mercy, for the village, for the dead, and even for the damned soul they had just condemned to fire. When the final amen was whispered, everyone stood still. Then Son collapsed. He had remained quiet all through the chaos, crouched in a corner with his hands over his ears, as if trying to block out the entire world. When he fell, they rushed to him, his mother, the elders, even strangers. But his eyes had gone far. He was weeping, whispering something over and over again. The FUFU cried. It cried. They carried him to the health center. By evening, word had spread far beyond Okade. Neighboring villages heard the tale. Journalists began to arrive the next morning. Cameras, microphones, questions. The community shut their doors. They didn't want fame. They didn't want headlines. They wanted healing. But how do you heal from something like that? How do you cleanse a pot that once boiled your own blood? The village elders called a meeting. They sat beneath the big Irako tree, where verdicts had been passed for generations. Mama Efan's house and buka were sealed, and later set ablaze by the youths. Not even her benches were spared. The very soil where her pot once sat was dug up and thrown into the river. They called on traditional priests. Libations were poured. Animals were sacrificed to cleanse the land. For 7 days, no one cooked outside. No buka opened. The village fasted, not just from food, but from trust. And yet, nothing felt the same. Children refused to eat fufu. Mothers hesitated before seasoning soup. Every time someone scooped stew, they wondered, what if it whispers? What if it begs? A darkness had settled on Okade, but out of the ashes, something else began to grow. On the 8th day, a group of women gathered at the village square. They had lost daughters, sisters, nieces. Their grief was beyond words, but they chose not to remain broken. They formed a group called Awan Aya Otito, Mothers of Truth. Their mission was simple: to watch, to listen, to question. They went from buka to buka, inspecting food, asking questions, training young girls in how to speak up, how to say no, how to escape danger. They partnered with churches, mosques, even traditionalists. They began to teach the people of Okade that kindness should never silence suspicion, and that evil often comes dressed in generosity. Years later, when travelers passed through Okade and asked why every restaurant had a mirror in the kitchen, the locals would reply, to remind us to look at ourselves, to never forget what we did, and what we allowed to be done. As for Son, he eventually healed. Slowly, the village saw him as a messenger now, not a madman. The one whose ears were open enough to hear the whisper of the damned. He never went back to Lagos. Instead, he stayed, opening a small food shop called Aunjalafia, Food of Peace. He cooked simply, honestly, and he never served fufu. Not once. The days turned into weeks, but the stench of what had happened in Okade refused to fade. It wasn't just the memory of burning flesh or the sound of Mama Efan's final confession that haunted the air. It was the realization that evil had lived among them, served them food, smiled at their children, and whispered lullabies into bowls of soup. Even after Mama Efan's remains were buried in an unmarked grave far beyond the village boundary, people still crossed to the other side of the road when they passed where her buka once stood. No one could walk past without remembering. The ground itself seemed to breathe sorrow. A sign had been placed there by the youths, crudely carved into wood. Never again. It was around that time that strange things began to happen. At first, they were small. A hawker swore she saw someone sitting on the roof of Mama Ethan's old house, long after it had been burned to the ground. A group of children returning from evening lessons claimed they heard a woman's voice calling them by name, offering stew and fried fish. An old man said he saw a tortoise crawling into the market square at midnight, its shell cracked, its eyes bleeding. The elders dismissed them. Trauma, they said. The mind playing tricks. But fear has a way of spreading without proof. Then, one evening, the local well turned red. The women who had gone to fetch water screamed and dropped their buckets. The water shimmered like fresh blood under the lantern light. People gathered. The chiefs came. Someone fetched the imam. Another fetched the pastor. Incantations were said. Prayers were screamed. But the water remained red until dawn. The next day, the well was sealed. Okade had always been a spiritual village, balanced delicately between tradition and religion. But now, superstition returned in full force. People whispered that Mama Ethan's spirit had not moved on, that she had left behind something unfinished, something vengeful. Some said the ground was cursed. Others believed she had buried charms and secrets in the land, things that kept her evil rooted deep, feeding off the guilt of those who had dined at her buka. But the truth, when it came, was worse than anyone expected. It began when Awan Aya Otito, the Mothers of Truth, decided to cleanse Mama Ethan's compound once and for all. They brought in an old seer from Osogbo. She was said to be over 100 years old, with cloudy eyes that saw deeper than flesh. The village gathered as she arrived, walking slowly with her staff carved from Irako wood, her wrapper tied in 4 knots. She did not greet anyone. She walked straight to the blackened foundation where the buka once stood, dug her staff into the earth, and whispered something only the wind could hear. Then she turned. "There is still something beneath," she said. She cooked them in fire, but she buried something in the ground, something that still breathes. Gasps erupted. The youths began to dig immediately. The ground was dry, but it gave way easily, as if it, too, wanted the truth to be free. They dug for hours. Sweat dripped. The sun beat down. Then one of the boys shouted, "I found something." The others rushed to him. He was holding a rusted metal pot, covered in blood-stained cloth. Inside, they found bones, small, fragile, childlike. Alongside them were cowries, broken mirrors, feathers, and a single name scratched onto a piece of metal. A beak. Silence. A beak had been one of the first children to go missing. A sweet girl with big eyes and a loud laugh. Mama Ethan had told her mother she ran away to Ibadan with a mechanic. That had been 3 years ago. Now her truth was lying in a rusted pot. The seer knelt beside it, scooped some soil into her hand, and tasted it. The crowd gasped again. She fed on pain, the old woman said. She didn't just cook flesh. She cooked fear. Each death made her stronger, and each bowl she served bound the eater to her. A scream tore through the air. It was a woman, Agbeek, a market seller, clutching her stomach and writhing on the ground. "I ate her food every week," she wailed. "I dream of fire every night. I hear voices in my head." She was the first. In the days that followed, several others came forward, claiming to be tormented. Nightmares, shadows, whispers. Some fell sick. Others began to speak in tongues, scream in the middle of the night, or withdraw into silence. They were called the errant eaters, the flesh-fed, victims of a curse they never knew they were part of. The seer told them only one thing could break it: confession, cleansing, and remembering. The community gathered at the riverbank, for a great ritual. White cloths were worn, old songs were sung, sacrifices were made. For every name of a missing child remembered, a candle was lit and floated down the river. For every person who had eaten from Mama Ethan's pot, a prayer was said. When the last candle flickered into the water, a gust of wind blew through the trees. Some say it carried a whisper. Others say it carried forgiveness. The ritual at the riverbank brought peace, but only for a moment. For as the villagers returned to their homes, holding the echoes of old songs in their hearts, something heavy remained in the air. It wasn't just grief. It was guilt. Guilt from mouths that had swallowed what should never have been served. Guilt from eyes that saw but chose to look away. And guilt from hearts that remembered things they had buried deep. That night, the stars over Okade refused to shine. The moon hid behind thick clouds, and even the crickets went silent. In the darkness, confessions began to rise like smoke from tired roofs. The first to speak was Baba Anil, the village landlord. He was nearly 70 and had eaten at Mama Ethan's buka every week for 10 years. His voice was low and trembling as he sat before the elders beneath the Irako tree. I once saw a child run into her kitchen late at night, he began, his eyes wet. I thought it strange. I stood to check, but she saw me. She gave me a bowl of nkwobi and smiled. I sat back down. I ate. I told myself it was nothing. His voice broke. I told myself maybe it was her niece. No one spoke. The silence was heavier than any judgment. Others followed. A tailor, a primary school teacher, a local hunter. All told stories, not of crimes, but of moments. Moments where things didn't feel right. When the meat was too soft. When the stew had a strange sweetness. When a scream was heard at night, but no one asked questions in the morning. They hadn't committed the evil, but they had fed it. And now, the truth was a bitter meal none of them could spit out. By midnight, a long line had formed near the Irako tree. Not to be punished, but to be freed. A bowl of river water sat beside the seer. Each person would kneel, dip their hands into the bowl, and speak. For every truth told, she dropped a kola nut into the earth. For every lie, she remained still. And when the kola finally cracked, she said, Okade will sleep in peace tonight. But peace doesn't always mean silence. For in one house at the edge of the village, something stirred. It was Son. He hadn't spoken since the cleansing. He sat in his room, staring at the wall, the uneaten bowl of yam porridge his mother left beside him now cold. His mother tried to hold him, tried to pray. But Son had gone somewhere else, a place between now and before. He saw the FUFU again, soft, white, trembling. I'm a human being, please help me. Those words rang in his ears like church bells. They wouldn't stop. He tried to close his ears. He tried to sleep. But every time he blinked, he saw a beak's face, smiling, then screaming, then gone. Then a voice, not in the room, not outside, inside him. Go to the buka. He stood, quietly. His feet moved like he was floating. His mother didn't see him leave. Down the dark path he walked, past the wells, past the trees, until he stood before the blackened ground where the buka once stood. The air was colder here. The night felt heavier. He looked up at the sky, clouds still hiding the moon. Then he whispered, I'm sorry. A breeze stirred. I didn't know. I should have known. I should have said something. Then a soft sob. Son turned. Standing behind him was a small girl. She wore a tattered school uniform and held a broken doll in her hand. Her eyes were too sad, too deep. Are you a beak? Son asked. The girl nodded. He fell to his knees. I saw you in my dreams. She stepped closer. We didn't want to die. We just wanted to go home. I'm so sorry, Son wept. She placed her cold hand on his head. Tell them to build a school. Where we died, let children learn instead. Then she was gone. Just like that. At dawn, Son returned home. His mother rushed out, tears in her eyes. Where have you been? We searched all night. Son hugged her, then whispered, I saw her. And then, in the morning light, for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Later that day, he stood before the village square and spoke with a voice stronger than it had ever been. We cannot erase what happened, but we can build from it. Let us make this land where she fed evil a place that now feeds knowledge. The elders listened. The people clapped. A month later, the ground where Mama Ifin's buka once stood became a construction site. And soon, a small building rose. White walls, open windows, a blackboard in front, and carved into the stone above the door. A Beek Memorial School. From silence to song. The children of Okade would now sit where secrets once boiled. They would learn, laugh, and read aloud in the very space where screams had once echoed in silence. And perhaps in the whispers of the wind, a beak and the others would smile. The sun rose gently over Okade, casting golden light across the rooftops and farms. But the heart of the village now pulsed with new rhythm, children's laughter echoing from the freshly built Beek Memorial School. Their voices filled the air, like music meant to chase away old ghosts. Inside the classroom, Son stood at the chalkboard, writing the alphabet. He had chosen not to return to Lagos. He stayed behind to teach, to rebuild, to atone. Each day he opened the school gate, he whispered a quiet prayer. Let no child be lost again. But not all wounds heal with time, and not all stories end with a bow. It was on a Friday morning when the past came knocking again. A stranger had arrived in Okade, a woman, tall and slender, wearing a red scarf over her face. She asked for water at the market, smiled politely, and moved like someone who knew too much about a place she had never visited. She walked past the school. She stood before the old buka grounds. She smiled, and then she whispered, They burned my sister. But I carry the same recipe. No one heard her, but the wind did. That evening, a new food stall appeared by the roadside, just outside the village border. No one knew who owned it, but the aroma that poured from it was tempting, familiar, irresistible. Smoke danced over the road, rich with spice and secrets. Grilled fish, stew, jollof rice, pounded yam. The banner read, Tasty pot, food that touches your soul. Curious travelers from other towns began to stop there. Soon, even a few Okade youths, drawn by hunger and cheap prices, visited the stand. They returned home full, smiling, licking their fingers. But then, the dreams began again. One girl, Tenny, woke up screaming, her pillows soaked in tears. I saw a woman cooking, but her hands were fire. Another boy collapsed in church service, muttering. I tasted myself in the stew. Whispers returned, and Son knew. One evening, he approached the stall. The same smell, the same smile, but the woman behind the pot wore gloves, white gloves, too clean for someone working over fire. He ordered a plate of fufu. He stared at it and waited. Silence. Then a shiver. Not from the food, from within himself. He stood and walked away. He did not eat it. The woman called after him sweetly, You won't eat, teacher? He turned and saw her eyes, Mama Ifin's eyes, but younger, colder, more alive. Son didn't sleep that night. He went to the chiefs the next morning, told them what he saw, what he felt, How the evil had not ended, it had simply changed hands. But the chiefs hesitated. There was no proof, no screams, no bones in a pot, just aroma, just good food. So, Sohn went to the elders, to the seer from Osogbo. She listened and nodded. They never work alone, she said. Evil like that runs in bloodlines. You cut the tree, but the root was still alive. What should we do? Sohn asked. The old woman picked up a gourd, cracked it open, and poured black liquid into a bowl. You must return the plate, she whispered. Give her a meal she cannot eat. That night, Sohn returned to the stall. The woman smiled. You came back. He nodded. I brought something for you, from the children of Okade. He placed the bowl in front of her. Inside was nothing but ashes. The woman blinked. What is this? A memory, Sohn said. A memory of what your sister did, of what we burned. The air grew still. Her smile faded, and then the ashes inside the bowl began to tremble. A whisper rose, children's voices singing an old lullaby. The woman screamed, knocking the pot over. Flames leapt from the stew. Her scarf flew off. Her face, half burned, half beautiful, was revealed. Gasps rose from the small crowd watching. Sohn stood firm. You will not cook us again. The villagers, now remembering, now recognizing, stepped forward. This time no one looked away. They didn't scream. They didn't run. They surrounded her. The ground beneath the stall cracked. The pot split in two, and the fire went out not with smoke but with silence. The woman fainted. When she awoke, she was no longer in Okade. She was outside the boundary, stripped of fire, stripped of secrets. The elders made a law that day. Never again would any food be sold in the village without ritual cleansing. Every new buka would be blessed. Every pot would be prayed over. And the motto of the village became, we eat not just with our mouths, but with our hearts. Sohn returned to the school. He smiled as children recited proverbs and shared groundnuts during break time. No more fufu that begged. No more whispers in the fire. Just voices, living voices, telling the tale of the day evil was served on a plate and the village refused to eat. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.